This is the second half of our conversation on legal, regulatory, and ethical considerations and compliance programs. As the use of data and analytics becomes even more pervasive, relying on individual managers within an organization to ask the right questions and to make the right decisions will not be sufficient to ensure legal and ethical use of data. Remember, there's a lot of gray areas when it comes to ethical collection, use, and analysis of data. So if firms want to find themselves on the right side of the law and the right side of their customers, they'll need to establish review and compliance programs to guide the enterprise. Privacy and big data watchdog groups suggest that organizations formulate and codify a code of conduct for data and analytics. This written code of conduct is an organization's internal policy mandate along with an ethics assessment process. The code of conduct comprises an organization's mechanism for demonstrating its 1. Process to assess the full set of risks associated with data and analytics, 2. Its strategy to mitigate those risks, 3. Its basis for decision making, 4. Its process for arriving at whether the risk mitigation is effective, and lastly, it acts as an ongoing internal oversight mechanism. They suggest this code of conduct be based on 5 core values. The first of these 5 core values is whether it is beneficial. That means both the collection, integration, and analysis phases require an organization to define the benefits that will be created by the analytics and the parties that gain tangible value from that effort. The organization should define the usefulness or merit, as well as any potential risk, from any analysis so that it might be evaluated appropriately. If the benefits that will be created are limited, uncertain, or if the parties that benefit are not the ones at risk from the analysis, then appropriate mitigation for risk needs to be developed. The second core value is whether it is progressive. That means organizations need to consider if the use of the data and analytics will make the solution progressively better than if the data was not utilized. Bringing large and diverse data sets together can create risks for individuals. The outcome from using the data and analytics should be materially better than if the data and analytics were not applied to the problem. If the anticipated achievements or improvements can be gained in a less data-intensive manner, then that manner should be selected. The third core value is sustainable. Analytic models and data have an effective half-life. That's the period in which they correctly predict future behavior. The half-life of an insight affects its sustainability, so organizations need to understand the issues that affect the longevity or sustainability of their data and analytics models. These issues also need to be tracked so firms can determine when the data or analytics can no longer be used or whether they need to be changed or refined to keep up with evolving trends and individual expectations. The fourth core value is respect. Data and analytics may affect many parties in many different ways. Those parties include individuals to whom the data pertains, organizations that originate the data, organizations that aggregate the data, as well as organizations that might regulate the data. All these parties have interests that must be taken into consideration and respected. Organizations using data and analytics need to understand and look out for the interests of all stakeholders. The final core value is fairness. Fairness relates to the insights and applications that are a product of data and analytics. Data and analytics, while meeting the needs of the organization that is conducting or sponsoring the analysis, must also be fair to the individuals to whom the data pertains. Considering the organization's interests above the individual's is unfair, and so steps should be taken by an organization to balance individual and company interests to ensure integrity. Organizations which want to strive to be a leader in the ethical use of data and analytics should consider adopting leading practices from other ethics and compliance programs. Let's look at factors which differentiate companies with great ethics and compliance programs from those who have just good programs. First is set the tone at the top. The starting point for world-class ethics and compliance programs is at the board and senior management level. They need to have a sense of responsibility that they share and foster throughout the organization that protects shareholders' reputational and financial assets. The board and senior management absolutely must pay more than lip service to the need for ethics and compliance in analytics. A culture of integrity tends to be one of the single biggest determinants of behavior in many organizations. Culture is comprised of the underlying values, beliefs, attitudes, and expectations shared by an organization, and they use these to make decisions and to guide behaviors. For this reason, a culture of integrity is central to any effective ethics and compliance program. Ethics and compliance programs that do not clearly contribute to the culture of ethical and compliant behavior are likely to be viewed simply as controls or roadblocks, and this leads employees to look for ways around the codes of conduct. The next characteristic is a risk assessment participation. Here, the risk assessment should engage more than simply frontline managers. The board and senior managers need to participate in identifying and understanding the significant risks that are going to be associated with their use of data and analytics. The risk assessment needs to allow for honest consideration of the actions necessary to avoid, mitigate, or remediate any risks associated with use of data and analytics. Next is the characteristics of testing and monitoring. Consistency of execution is critical to the success of any organizational ethics program. To ensure consistency and relevancy, ethics programs need to be tested and monitored. All the policies, practices, and procedures developed to manage ethics are irrelevant if they're poorly understood and executed, and if, as a result, they don't change the behavior of the organization, nothing has been gained. Continuous training is also a characteristic of leaders. Hand in hand with testing and monitoring, training needs to occur regularly. The advances in data generation, collection, and analysis are happening so quickly that companies cannot assume an ethics program developed even 12 to 24 months ago is still a sufficient guide to the organization. And finally, having an ethics or compliance office or officer has been shown to be a key trait of leaders. Many of these organizations are appointing ethics officers. These are individuals responsible for helping the organization shape and implement its ethics programs. The ethics officer has day-to-day responsibility for overseeing the management of compliance and reputational risks, and is the agent for the board's fiduciary obligations to provide oversight and accountability on data usage. Even when a chief ethics officer exists, companies should also have oversight committees to review and evaluate the proposed use of data and analytics. This ends our lecture on data and analytics ethics, but we've really only just touched the surface. Organizations which are serious about data and analytics and their ethics will need to develop and implement robust programs to guide employees. Because what's true about the ability of legal and regulatory groups to keep up with changes in technology and analytics is also going to be true for organizations. Even the best will struggle to keep pace with the widening gap between what it can do, it wants to do, and what it should do. In the end, it may be up to each of us individually to understand and act appropriately with the data and analytic opportunities presented to us. If you have more questions or want more information on analytics, see the course reference section in Canvas. Thank you.